This was a massive spot to be in for such a young talent, to have a sold-out crowd completely behind her.
Eala from the Philippines could be the next big thing in pro tennis.
This is the goal, to do well on the WTA Tour. I'm super proud of what I was able to accomplish, but the end goal is to win slams.
Alex Eala has quite literally just rewritten the history books, and the entire global tennis community is still completely stunned while trying to process her monumental achievement. She arrived in Dubai sitting at rank 47, then dismantled a top 10 opponent to reach the quarterfinals of a 1,000-level event, before leaving with a ranking unmatched by any Filipino player in history. Her fiercest rivals have certainly seen these updated rankings, and they are definitely not smiling about it, so be sure to leave a comment with your thoughts below. We all wonder if Alex Eala has what it takes to crack the top 20 before the French Open kicks off, and exactly how deep she can run at Indian Wells and Miami. The rising tennis...
New career high para kay Pinay tennis star Alex Eala ang kanyang ranking ngayon sa women's tennis.
We absolutely need to begin by discussing the number, because that specific figure truly tells the entire incredible story of her becoming world number 32. That spectacular position is exactly where Alex currently sits in the global rankings, immediately following her phenomenal run at the Dubai Duty-Free Tennis Championships, which concluded in the quarterfinals. She touched down in Dubai holding the 47th spot in the world, but she is packing her bags and leaving as the 32nd ranked player globally. That represents a massive 15-spot leap from just one single tournament, where she neither won the title nor reached the final, and even dropped her final match to the third overall seed in straight sets. Yet despite all of that, she is now world number 32, setting a brilliant new personal best and achieving the absolute highest ranking any Filipino tennis athlete has ever reached during the entire Open era. You really need to take a moment and let the sheer magnitude of that historic accomplishment sink in completely before we move on to anything else. This is not merely the greatest ranking she has managed to personally claim, but rather the highest peak any Filipino player has ever summited throughout the entire modern history of professional tennis. She has boldly stepped into uncharted territory that absolutely no other individual from her home nation has ever managed to explore before her. What makes it even more staggering is that she accomplished this extraordinary feat at merely 20 years of age, even while taking a loss in the quarterfinal round. The underlying math behind this massive leap in the standings is truly worth understanding, because it perfectly explains why making the quarterfinals at a 1,000-level event yields such dramatically significant results. These elite-level 1,000 tournaments sit directly beneath the prestigious Grand Slam events when it comes to the overall hierarchy of available ranking points. Securing a quarterfinal finish at one of these premium events awards a massive 215 ranking points, which is a genuinely difficult total to accumulate at lower-tier competitions. Even if you play across multiple tournaments throughout just one single week in Dubai, Eala managed to gather up enough points that it would have otherwise taken her several months of highly consistent performances at much smaller events to equal. That massive payout perfectly illustrates exactly how the professional ranking system handsomely rewards the athletes who bravely step up and execute their game plan on the absolute biggest stages in the sport. Her incredible 15-position surge from 47 all the way to 32 is the direct mathematical result of those 215 points, landing right on top of the solid foundation she had already worked so hard to build. Furthermore, hitting that magical number 32 is far more than just a deeply satisfying personal milestone for her burgeoning career. It holds immense operational significance in ways that completely alter the trajectory of her entire 2026 season, because 32 is the crucial cutoff for being seeded at the Grand Slams. Maintaining a ranking inside that top 32 bracket guarantees her a protected seeded position at all four of the major tournaments, including the Australian Open, the French Open, Wimbledon, and the United States Open. In highly practical terms, earning a seed means that she is completely shielded from having to face off against another seeded competitor until at least the third round of any Grand Slam tournament. The official tournament bracket effectively protects you from having to battle the absolute best players in the field during those crucial opening matches. Having those two initial rounds gives you the vital time needed to find your rhythm and build up your match sharpness, long before the truly elite competition arrives. For Eala, specifically looking ahead to the French Open on the horizon rapidly becomes the most pressing and exciting conversation in the tennis world right now. She suffered a tough loss in the opening round of Roland Garros back in 2025, which is undeniably a frustrating outcome. She will be extremely eager to erase from her record as swiftly as humanly possible. Arriving in Paris as a fully seeded competitor in 2026 completely revolutionizes the structural reality and trajectory of her entire tournament experience. Rather than running the risky gamble of potentially drawing a top 10 seed in the first or second round, she officially secures a heavily protected path straight into the third round at the absolute bare minimum. For an athlete who has already proven she possesses the firepower to dismantle top 10 opponents, bringing her record against the elite tier to an impressive 3 wins and 3 losses, securing a guaranteed spot in the third round before encountering genuine resistance, represents an incredibly massive advantage. But before the clay courts of Paris even enter the picture, we have other major events to deeply consider. Right around the corner is the highly anticipated American hardcourt swing, and this is precisely where her incredible narrative becomes genuinely electrifying, because Indian Wells officially kicks off on March 4th. The prestigious Miami Open follows shortly after on March 17th, and since both are mandatory 1,000-level events, it absolutely guarantees that every single top-tier player on the planet is required to show up and compete. Furthermore, the massive bounty of ranking points available at these tournaments ranks among the absolute highest you can possibly earn anywhere outside of the 4 Grand Slams. The ultimate champion of each respective event successfully collects a massive 1,000 points, while the runner-up takes home 650, and even a semi-finalist walks away with an incredibly valuable $390. Points. Simply surviving to reach the round of 16 manages to deliver a highly meaningful stash of ranking points that can significantly boost a player in the standings. Eala, stepping into both of these massive tournaments as a seeded player, which her current stellar ranking makes highly probable, translates into something incredibly specific within a standard draw format that typically features 96 competitors. Securing a highly coveted seed within a massive 96-player draw automatically earns that athlete a crucial first-round bye. While all the unseeded players are out there brutally grinding through their opening matches, accumulating fatigue and potentially picking up minor physical ailments, a seeded competitor gets to kick off their campaign in the second round, completely rested, and having had the luxury of watching their upcoming opposition battle through their initial match. That profound structural advantage heavily compounds as you progress deeper into a grueling and lengthy tournament. This is exactly why the underlying mathematics driving her aggressive push toward the top 20 is the specific factor making her closest rivals genuinely sweat with discomfort. The daunting gap separating world number 32 and world number 20 currently sits at approximately 800 to 1,000 ranking points. While that certainly sounds like an exceptionally large mountain to climb within the highly lucrative context of the American hardcourt swing, it is actually not nearly as insurmountable as it initially appears. If Eala manages to successfully battle her way into the round of 16 at both Indian Wells and Miami, she will seamlessly add roughly 240 points to her current overall total. While that specific amount is not quite enough on its own to shatter the top 20 barrier, it undeniably represents an incredibly meaningful step in the right direction. If she successfully manages to replicate anything even remotely close to her spectacular Miami form from 2025, where she stormed all the way to the semifinals as an overlooked wildcard ranked well outside the top 100, the resulting points accumulation quickly becomes genuinely transformative for her career. A brilliant semifinal finish at either one of these premier tournaments instantly delivers a massive payload of 390 points. 2 incredibly deep and successful runs across the grueling American swing could very realistically propel her straight inside the elite top 25 long before the European clay court season even begins in April. pulling off another magical Cinderella run specifically in Miami, which is a tournament where she has already loudly demonstrated her supreme comfort could easily push her right to the very edge of the top 20 well before she ever sets foot in Paris. Taking a moment to dive deep into her historic Miami performance is absolutely worth our time because it is directly relevant to understanding exactly how seriously we need to take these massive future projections. Back in 2025, Eala dramatically entered the Miami Open as a mere wild card, which essentially means players who are graciously granted special entry into a main draw, completely regardless of their actual global completely to ranking. That essentially means she was ranked so incredibly low at the time that she normally would never have even qualified to make the main tournament draw under standard procedures. She brilliantly took that generous wildcard entry and boldly proceeded to completely dismantle Jelena Ostapenko before subsequently eliminating Madison Keys, who was a phenomenal talent. Madison Keys was impressively ranked 5th in the entire world at that exact moment, before Eala proceeded to utterly shock Iga Swiatek, the undisputed world number 1 in dominant straight sets, to spectacularly reach the semifinals. I really need you to read that statement back very slowly and let it sink in that a completely unheralded wildcard entrant accomplished this. She absolutely demolished the world, number 1 in clean straight sets at a massive 1,000 level event, and that single historic run permanently placed Eala on the global tennis map in a spectacular way that absolutely no amount of smaller tournament victories could have ever possibly achieved. Taking down the world number 1 in straight sets at a 1,000 level event permanently placed Eala on the global tennis map in a spectacular way that no amount of smaller tournament victories could have ever possibly achieved. It forcefully demonstrated that her dynamic playing style, featuring that lethal left-handed top spin and relentless aggression, is world-class. Her punishing baseline patterns and phenomenal court coverage, which directly reflect years of rigorous training at the Rafa Nadal Academy, completely translate to the highest level of the sport under genuine match pressure. The electric Miami courts, the vibrant atmosphere, and the incredibly loud crowd all play to her distinct advantage. Having an enormous Filipino community absolutely packing the grandstands creates a phenomenal home-away-from-home environment that fuels her competitive fire. All of these incredible elements suit her perfectly in ways that have now been definitively proven in fierce competition, rather than merely being theorized, making her entry into the 2026 Miami Open completely different from her wildcard days. She is now proudly entering the tournament as the world number 32, and the structural difference between those two vastly different starting points is absolutely enormous. Securing a crucial seed, earning valuable draw protection, carrying massive confidence from Dubai, and leveraging a full year of elite competitive experience changes absolutely everything for her campaign. Eala, stepping onto the courts in Miami in 2026, is a categorically different and far more dangerous proposition than the inexperienced version of herself who competed there in 2025. And what we must constantly remember is that even back in 2025, she still miraculously managed to battle her way to the semifinals. The incredible impact of the Filipino community turning out during the American hardcourt swing is certainly not something to casually dismiss as mere sentimental noise. It is a highly genuine competitive factor that completely alters how these crucial matches unfold, especially since American tennis venues across California and Florida boast significantly large Filipino populations. Whenever Eala steps onto the court at those specific venues, the resulting crowd energy completely abandons the polite and evenly distributed appreciation you would typically expect from a neutral tennis audience. Instead, it instantly transforms into a wildly passionate flag-waving and noise-generating powerhouse of overwhelming support. This deafening level of crowd participation genuinely rattles opposing players who are much more accustomed to the quiet and restrained decorum of traditional European crowds. Competitors hailing from the established European contingent of the tour, including French, Czech, Romanian, and Polish players, are simply not prepared for this wild environment. They are completely caught off guard by what it actually sounds like when a massively packed Miami stadium gets entirely behind a single player, creating an electric atmosphere that feels much more like a chaotic basketball game than a quiet tennis match. Eala herself has openly admitted that competing in America simply never feels like she is playing away from her actual home. Whenever her legs start feeling heavy and the match gets uncomfortably close, that roaring crowd injects her with a massive surge of energy that her opponents simply cannot access from the opposite side of the net. That distinct psychological and deep emotional advantage is incredibly real and a massive weapon in her competitive arsenal. It is heavily documented across her stellar American results, and the positive effect only compounds at every single venue where the passionate Filipino community turns out in massive numbers. Furthermore, her recent Dubai quarterfinal clash against Coco Gauff served as an incredibly useful specific data point regarding exactly where Eala currently stands and what specific elements she desperately needs to improve moving forward. That highly competitive match successfully highlighted two very clear and distinct areas for her immediate physical development. She must significantly improve her overall fitness management across a grueling tournament week and drastically enhance her serve effectiveness under extreme pressure. But thankfully, neither of these are unfixable problems. Both of these crucial elements are prime areas where highly targeted developmental work during the 3-week gap between Dubai and Indian Wells can yield highly measurable and positive results. The specific physical conditioning issue, where Eala clearly looked exhausted during the quarterfinal, is something her highly dedicated team must immediately address. Even though she had actually played far fewer total minutes than Gauff throughout the entire tournament, that visible fatigue can be effectively managed through strategic training adjustments and much better recovery routines. Implementing stricter protocols and utilizing the exact kind of intensely focused preparation that the prestigious Rafa Nadal Academy is specifically designed to provide will easily solve this tough conditioning hurdle. Evolving her serve is undoubtedly a much longer developmental project, but the positive upward trajectory of her newly adjusted mechanics is already quite visible to anyone paying close attention. Injecting more pace and significantly narrowing the margin of error on her serve delivery will naturally increase her double faults in the very short term, as she gets comfortable with the new adjustment, but it will ultimately convert a glaring weakness into a neutral asset and eventually a lethal weapon. Every single professional player who has ever managed to execute a significant improvement to their serve has inevitably endured a frustrating transitional period where their statistical numbers briefly dipped before becoming considerably 18-7 more dominant. Eala, alongside her highly experienced coach Juan Bosch, is already acutely aware of this exact developmental issue. The grueling developmental work is already happening behind the scenes, but what her spectacular Dubai campaign demonstrated most powerfully is that her underlying mental infrastructure is undoubtedly already operating at an elite championship level. Surviving that chaotic tiebreak against Paolini, where she had to navigate through 6 incredibly tense match points before finally unleashing a phenomenal forehand winner, completely showcased her nerves of steel. Firing that blistering shot right up the line to finally close out the grueling match on her 5th attempt proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that she is a warrior who absolutely refuses to collapse when the competitive situation gets wildly complicated. The vast majority of players at her young age who are suddenly faced with that agonizing sequence of missed match points during a massive 1,000-level quarterfinal against a formidable top 10 seed would inevitably find something within their core mechanics completely shattering under the immense pressure, instead of completely crumbling under the blinding spotlight. Eala miraculously found a way to unleash an absolute rocket of a forehand winner. That phenomenal level of pure mental resilience is simply not something any coach can artificially draw up on a locker room whiteboard or easily teach to a developing athlete. It is an innate killer instinct that either naturally exists within a competitor or it simply does not, and in her specific case, it radiantly exists, which Dubai absolutely confirmed, under some genuinely agonizing and difficult competitive conditions. The much broader cultural significance of her successfully reaching world number 32 heavily extends well beyond just the phenomenal individual career trajectory of Alexandra Eala. It boldly stands as the absolute highest ranking ever achieved by any Filipino tennis player in the entire history of the Open era, which is a staggering fact that instantly places her incredible journey into a monumental historical context, completely transcending the sport itself. The beautiful sport of tennis has merely existed as a distant and fleeting aspiration within the Philippines for several long decades. The nation endured that long wait without ever producing a native player who could successfully sustain elite results at the absolute highest professional tier. But Eala is completely changing the narrative by doing so much more than merely winning tennis matches. She is actively establishing a monumental proof of concept that fundamentally revolutionizes her entire home country and its complex relationship with the sport at the truly elite professional level. We have to remember where it all started back when she first picked up a tennis racket at just 4 years old, while learning under the incredibly loving guidance of her late grandfather. Her incredibly supportive parents made the massive, life-altering decision to send her all the way to the prestigious Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca as a young teenager, right when she was bravely navigating the incredibly difficult transition from sheer junior dominance into the brutal reality of professional competition. Absolutely none of those massive personal sacrifices and monumental leaps of faith ever guaranteed that they would eventually produce the 32nd ranked player in the entire world. The elite group of players, currently ranked between number 1 and number 31 right now, each possess their own deeply personal story of immense sacrifice and heavy financial investment that ultimately brought them to where they currently stand. However, her incredibly unique story successfully produced a phenomenal global ranking that absolutely nobody from her fiercely proud home country had ever lived to see before her rapid ascent. Her fiercest rivals, who are nervously looking at the freshly updated rankings immediately after the Dubai tournament, are undoubtedly doing the exact same terrifying mathematical calculations that the rest of the tennis world is currently doing right now by realizing a player who sat at 47th just 3 weeks ago is now firmly entrenched at 32nd. A phenomenal young athlete who brilliantly reached the Miami semifinals as a completely unheralded wildcard, ranked well outside the top 100, is now confidently storming back into Miami as a highly respected seeded player, boasting a brand new career high ranking. This is a highly dangerous competitor who has successfully defeated 3 massive top 10 opponents while boldly proving she belongs under the brightest lights. She has remarkably never been completely blown off the court during any of her 5 fierce meetings with elite-tier players, and now she is fearlessly heading into the 2 absolute biggest non-Grand Slam events of the year. She arrives at these massive premier calendar events, carrying overwhelming momentum, supreme confidence, and a wildly passionate crowd eagerly waiting to roar for her across both California and Florida. The sheer panic currently spreading throughout the locker room is completely understandable because the underlying numbers absolutely justify their immense fear, as Indian Wells officially kicks off on March 4th, ensuring that this spectacular story is definitely not slowing down anytime soon. Sitting proudly as the new world number 32 marks an unbelievable career high and permanently cements the absolute highest ranking any Filipino tennis player has ever miraculously achieved on the global stage. Alexandra Eala proudly walked right out of Dubai, having technically lost her final brutal match, yet somehow still managed to completely rewrite the permanent history books of professional tennis. Anyway, the highly anticipated Indian Wells tournament is merely 3 short weeks away, and the entire global tennis community is paying extremely close attention to her every move. So please make sure to hit that like button completely, subscribe to the channel, and definitely drop all of your thoughts in the comments below before we see you next time.